The highly anticipated DLC for Sonic X Shadow Generations, the movie pack, has officially arrived. Now, a lot of things were actually unanswered when officially going into this. The only thing that we actually knew that we were going to be getting was going to be a skin for Shadow alongside a stage that was inspired from Sonic Movie 3, as well as Shadow's voice actor for Sonic Movie 3, Keanu Reeves. Now, within this video, I'd like to talk about the highlights, but also some of the complaints that I have about this DLC. Now, this DLC is quite short, but I do want to talk about the things that I really loved about this DLC, but also some of the things that I personally disliked, and potentially even convince some of you to potentially buy it or play it. So with that being said, let's talk about the Sonic movie DLC inside of Sonic X Shadow Generations. The first thing that I'd like to talk about is something that caught my attention quite quick when jumping into this DLC, and that's the music for the stage. Now, the stage is just called Tokyo Act 1, which makes sense as this is where the movie is shot and also where the stage is taking its design from. But instead of actually using an entirely new soundtrack, Sega actually decided to go back and use a track from Shadow the Hedgehog in Westopolis. If you don't know, Westopolis is actually the first stage inside of Shadow the Hedgehog 2005. But the really cool thing about this is they decided to completely remix Westopolis for this stage. And Westopolis is already a city-themed stage, so it actually fits extremely well with this Tokyo-themed stage. The song was actually leaked out quite a few months ago at a Tokyo Game Show by Jun Tsunoye, the lead guitarist of Crush 40, where he decided to perform this remix live to all the people attending the event. But hearing it actually in the game while playing it, it actually goes so damn hard. And I generally think that this is actually one of the best remixes and songs that is actually inside of Sonic X Shadow Generations. And I know that might be some early bias as this DLC has only been out for a couple hours as of recording this, but after playing it a few times, I can't get enough of this remix and I can't wait to listen to it more on my free time. So even if you don't play this stage, I very much encourage that you go listen to this remix, as you won't be disappointed, as Jun Tsunoye totally cooked on this song. But moving into the thing that I think people are going to hype up the most, and it's very well deserving of being hyped up, is the cinematics. You not only have a really cool cinematic of Shadow entering this warp ring to go into this Tokyo stage and being sucked into it that looks super cool, but also the really cool cinematic and cutscene where Shadow gets teleported to Tokyo and you see Keanu Reeves take over his voice. I'll get to Keanu in a second, but I just want to focus on the cinematics for a second. The next time you actually see a cinematic is quite later on in the stage in the middle of it, where Shadow is chasing down a gun helicopter and trying to take it down. But not only does he just take this down, he completely obliterates this thing. In what might be the most badass cinematic in Sonic history, this cinematic is purely insane. You not only see Shadow running at super fast speeds, but also dodging and hopping over different missiles just looks incredible. But not only does he do that, he completely takes a rocket head on and just kicks it and rides it up to the helicopter. Like, this dude is an absolute madman. And then proceeds to Chaos Spear this thing, taking it down and ripping out the pilot from it. I think it's pretty funny to see the gun pilot just hop out and pull his parachute as Shadow just gives him the death stare as he's jumping out, but also kind of shows that Shadow might not be all that bad. While he might hate Gun in the movie, it does look like he has some sympathy for humans. Maybe that's the Maria showing in him. But that's also kind of another discussion that's kind of confusing, as is this the Shadow from the Sonic X Shadow Generations game, or is he trying to be more of the movie version of it? The impression that I get is that it's going to be the Sonic X Shadow Generations version of Shadow just being teleported into this movie setting, and it seems like he's just trying to get back to white space. But it also kind of makes you question, why is he going after Gun in this, as doesn't he kind of work for them now? I don't know, maybe that's just something that I'm personally kind of getting confused, and maybe it's not that deep, as I don't really think story is a big thing about this. It's more of just a promotion for the movie, but just something that kind of stuck in the back of my mind as running through this. And you also have the ending cutscene of Shadow running up Tokyo Tower and taking down yet another helicopter. Shadow truly just has no fears of anything, I swear. He not only smashes it while in mid-air and then jumps back onto the Tokyo Tower, but also hits this cool ass looking pose while doing it. And this is actually the end of the stage where it goes into the results screen. And I'm gonna say it now, this is the best result screen that we've ever received in any Sonic game. Shadow just jumping off the tower and landing on his feet to perform whatever rank that you got looks so badass. And it looks like there's a few different ranks here. I haven't personally seen all of them. I've only seen the S and then a B rank video that I saw on Twitter, but both of them are super badass. I think if this is a sign of things to come for the movie, I think the Shadow is going to be amazing and potentially even one of the best Shadows that we've received. And then you have Shadow performing chaos control on a bunch of missiles to get back to white space finally. And that's really it when it comes to cinematics. None of the challenge modes actually have any cinematics, and like I said, this is an extremely short DLC, but for the cinematics that we actually got, they cooked super hard, and a huge round of applause to Sega for that. When it comes to gameplay, the gameplay is actually a lot of fun, and I love the city setting of the stage. I know it's kind of a meme inside of the Sonic community that there are so many city stages out there for Shadow, and even in this game where a lot of them end up being in Radical Highway, or whatever you want to call that city stage at the end of most stages in Sonic X Shadow Generations. But this one works really well for Shadow, and I really love the sense of direction that you have inside of the stage. I don't think that this is the best stage inside of the game by any means, as I think this kind of lacks some of the alternative pathways that some other stages have, and this also lacks not having any Doom powers basically whatsoever, but it does still utilize chaos control and just overall the Generations engine to make it a really good stage. I have a feeling that a big reason why they don't have you use Doom powers is because in the game it looks like it appears in the Space Colony Arc stage. I mean, at least to be able to access the DLC you have to at least play that stage to go into it, which makes sense, but I think it could have been okay if he had at least majority of the Doom powers to make the stage a little bit better. I think the Doom powers are genuinely a highlight of Shadow Generations, and it's really unfortunate that there was barely any usage of them inside of the stage, as I'm sure 99% of the people have already beat the game that are going to play this DLC and go back to the game. I do think the stage is really solid, and I think the challenges are actually pretty challenging just like any other challenge, but I don't think it does anything extremely different or special compared to the other stages. For a DLC stage, I'll admit I expected a little bit more. But overall, don't get me wrong, like I've said before, all Shadow Generation stages are good, and this one is no different, as this is still great. The next thing I'd actually like to talk about is the skin. So as you can see while playing through the stage, it changes Shadow's look into looking more like the movie Shadow. And this looks insanely detailed and really well done. It looks like Sega really took their time and put in a lot of effort into making the skin look really nice. I mean, there's just so much detail on this Shadow, you can see every piece of fur on him. And the skin just generally looks really nice and is personally my favorite skin inside of the game so far. And I think a touch that actually looks really well for Shadow, and I wouldn't actually mind them changing for normal Shadow, is the blue fire under his skates. The blue flames on his skate actually caught me by quite surprise on how much I genuinely liked them. The more I ran through the stage, the more I actually noticed them and how different they were compared to his orange or red flames that we typically have. But the blue ones actually look really nice and complement Shadow really well. I wouldn't mind them throwing this on normal Shadow or seeing a mod that potentially changes his flames under his skate to blue just to see how it would look with modern Shadow. But alongside the skin, we also got the amazing voice of Keanu Reeves. Now, before I say anything too much about Keanu Reeves' performance inside of this DLC, let me just say it's absolutely insane that we have the likes of Keanu Reeves voicing Shadow inside of a Sonic game. That alone is just a huge accomplishment for Sega and us Sonic fans. It's crazy to think just how big of an actor can come down and voice a game that we love. And I think Keanu will do great for Shadow in the movie. But for this DLC, I think it was a bit underwhelming. I know I might catch some heat for that in the comments, and some people might disagree with me on that, but something is just missing from Keanu with his Shadow take in this game. I don't know if he's being too quiet, where he's almost like whispering, or if he's not getting excited enough, or he's just not into the role enough, or this potentially could have just been recorded before the movie was entirely done with all of its lines. I just think something's a little missing here. Keanu doesn't have a bunch of lines in this, so I'm not going to say that he's going to be a bad fit for Shadow or anything like that, or the movie's going to be lackluster in his voice, as I'm really excited for the movie and I think Keanu will do a great job, don't get me wrong. But something about when he said chaos control at the end of the stage just didn't hit the same.
Chaos control!
At least not the same as Kirk or Jason Griffith or David Humphrey. Those all sounded amazing, and I absolutely love Shadow's voice actor with that. But after the DLC and you kind of go back to Kirk's voice and hearing his voice again, it kind of makes you appreciate just how good Kirk's take is on Shadow. Kirk in the beginning obviously didn't do very well in Shadow in my opinion, but hearing him now, he has improved so much, and I absolutely love his take on Shadow, and I think he's going to continue to do an amazing job. So, after hearing that, it truly makes you appreciate just how good Kirk is, and I think Keanu's going to improve a lot. All signs point to Sonic Movie 4 being a real thing, and even Ben Schwartz teasing that the end of Sonic Movie 3 is a teaser to what the next movie could potentially be. Keanu is going to have more chances, and he's going to continue to get better at Shadow as time goes along. And I can't wait to see what his Shadow becomes in the movie, and potentially maybe even in another DLC or another game. Who knows? Sky's the limit for Sonic these days. Anything is truly possible. Now, I'll finish the video off with just some complaints that I have about this. I obviously have talked about a few of them already, with the likes of Keanu kind of feeling a little flat, and the lack of Doom powers inside of this game, but some of the other ones I have are actually to do with the skin. Like I said, this is my favorite skin inside of the Sonic X Shadow Generations games so far, at least until they potentially add another one, or if this is it, this is definitely my favorite. The problem with this skin is you can't take it outside of the stage. So you can only use the movie Shadow skin inside of the Tokyo stage and also the challenges alongside it. And that's just a really big shame. I understand that they potentially didn't want to have Keanu voice more lines, as it probably cost a lot to have Keanu just voice the character in the game in general, and it's probably a big reason on why he has such little lines inside of the actual DLC. But I don't see the problem with just letting us use the skin and just using Kirk's voice lines for that skin. I mean, you did the same thing with Terios, and I mean, Terios doesn't technically have a voice actor, but still, I think that could still work. Or at least just using some of the basic voice lines that Keanu ended up recording. Either way, I think it's a really big shame that you're not allowed to do this, but I do understand if you're a PC player that this will 100% become a mod eventually. I'm sure as I'm saying this, someone is already working on putting this entire skin and Keanu voice into the actual main game for PC players to enjoy as mods. What I more mean as a shame is just for console players that kind of have that restriction and can't use mods inside of console games. They're not going to have that ability to move the Shadow movie skin into the normal game like us PC players, and I genuinely feel bad for console players. And I hope that's potentially something that they might change in the future, as I've seen a few people complain about this already. The other thing I will say is this DLC is just extremely short. I know that's just kind of the whole thing of this game, is this game as a whole is very short. Shadow Generations you can beat in a very fast time, but the stage is genuinely only like 3 minutes long, which is actually a pretty decent length for comparing it to other stages inside of the game. But this also only has one act alongside 2 challenges, and the challenges are again extremely short. So I would have just very much preferred potentially an act 2 to this, or just having the stage be a really long act 1. I'm sure Sega definitely wanted to get this out before the movie to promote it and try to get it out as fast as possible for people to enjoy, and also hopefully convince people to go watch the movie. But as somebody that was already going to do that, I just wish it was longer. And I kind of would have been okay if they waited till after the movie to release this. But potentially there could be more DLC. There isn't anything planned or announced at all, and a new Sonic game did just get announced in Sonic's Racing. So it's truly hard to say what the next plan is for 3D Sonic or potentially Shadow Generations if there is one. But this might be it, and Shadow Generations might officially be over now, which is kind of a sad thing to say. The other thing that I'll kind of be a little bit nitpicky about is just some of the collectible things inside of this stage. So instead of having red rings in here, you actually go ahead and pick up pictures of Movie Shadow in here. So there's these little photographs that you pick up throughout the stage that just give you kind of like a cool render or like picture or poster inside of the game that you can go ahead and view in the collection room after collecting all of them. You don't get anything exclusive for collecting all of them, and they're just some pretty basic pictures at that. I would have preferred something a little bit more cool, like, I don't know, giving us the skin inside of the main game Sega, opposed to giving us pictures, but like I said, I'm being a little bit nitpicky on that. The skin looks incredible, and I'm glad that we get to see every angle of it inside of those pictures, but I wanted a little bit more for collectible wise. But with that being said, I genuinely think this DLC is very, very good, and one of the best that we've ever received. I mean, we've received some pretty bad DLC over the times when it comes to Sonic games. And overall, just having the likes of the movie in this game, Keanu Reeves, and some really badass cinematics, you truly can't ask for more than that. But let me know in the comments below how you guys are feeling about this DLC and how much you have enjoyed it so far. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments below. But with all that being said, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.